Tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. No mai, haere mai. Hello everyone and welcome to this EHF session, Transformative Ventures with Global Impact, Crypto and Blockchain. This online event is part of Techweek, Aotearoa New Zealand's festival for tech that's good for the world. In the next 60 minutes, you will hear from 3 Edmund Hillary Fellows about their groundbreaking ventures and how Aotearoa can be a leader in crypto and blockchain for global impact. My name is Kelly Lee Dam and I am the Head of Communications and Engagement at EHF. We will now open with a karakia. Tū te wamai e runga, tū te wamai e raro, tū te wamai e roto, tū te wamai e waho. Kia tau a te Māori tū, te Māori ora ki te katoa. Homia, huia, taikia. The Edmund Hillary Fellowship is a community of more than 500 innovators, entrepreneurs and investors committed to New Zealand as a base camp for global impact. Our purpose is to partner with Aotearoa to find and build solutions to our toughest challenges. Our vision is that Aotearoa inspires global leadership and solutions for future generations built on principles of tangata tiriti and values of Sir Edmund Hillary. EHF Fellows are creating significant impact. In the past 7 years, we estimate that every dollar of public investment has created $111 of potential direct economic impact. Fellows are connecting Kiwi businesses to capital, expertise in new markets, and helping scale the New Zealand innovation system. They're tackling systems change from education to the environment and working with local communities on the ground, giving their time and talent. We also have fellows leading Transformative Ventures, and this is the second session in our Transformative Venture series. So what makes them transformative? As you will hear today, these fellows and their ventures are breaking new ground, often sending shockwaves through the traditional systems they seek to improve or radically change. Blockchain and crypto definitely fit that definition. Okay, so a few housekeeping notes before I hand over. If you could please keep your audio off unless you're speaking. And if you could please put your video on if you can, because this is about community and connection. And we'd love to see your faces. If you can ensure your Zoom name is your full name and your own name and not a work or another person. Just to note that we are recording this session to make it available afterwards, but only the speakers will be shown in the recording. If you have thoughts or questions, we'd love for you to share those in the chat box. And if you are asking a question, if you could just put question at the start of that so that we can pick that up at the end. The format for this session is that each panelist will have a few minutes to share their stories and insights, followed by a panel discussion before we open up to questions from you. So now I would like to hand over to Hillary Institute and Edmund Hillary Fellowship CEO, Rosalie Nelson. Kia ora, Rosalie.
Let me just begin that again. E ngā mana, e ngā reo, e ngā rau rangatira mā. Ki te mana whenua, tēnā koutou. Ko Rosalie Nelson tōku ingoa. Look, we do feel incredibly privileged to be joined by such incredible global leaders for this important conversation today on blockchain and crypto. We are very conscious that in this discussion, we are conflating two individual but obviously intertwined technologies. We think of blockchain as the enabling and the underpinning technology, the online record book or distributed ledger that everyone can see and no one can change without consensus. So it has enormous applications because it enables trust through visibility, the peer-to-peer transactions without mediation of a third party, which of course can alter power dynamics between people, business and government. And that's something that we can explore today. Crypto or cryptocurrencies is, of course, one of the highest profile applications as the peer-to-peer digital payment system built on blockchain that doesn't rely on banks to verify transactions. So what I'm going to do here is introduce each panelist in turn, and they'll take about 5 to 7 minutes to share their sort of ventures and vision. Then we'll have explore some of the themes raised. And as a part of that, we do want to talk about what is the potential for Aotearoa New Zealand, and then we'll open up to questions from those of you who are on the call. So please start thinking about the questions and be ready to enter those into chat. We're going to begin today's panel session with Paul Salisbury. So Paul is a seasoned crypto professional with over a decade of experience in cryptocurrencies and applied cryptography. He was the Chief Blockchain Officer for Techweek Group, Building Blockchain Ventures, and co-funded Blockchain Labs, Security Research and Smart Contract Auditing. So with that kind of deep expertise in security and key management, Paul is currently the co-founder and CTO of Everlasting, which is on a mission to bring wealth preservation and legacy planning to the digital asset space. And Paul is a Manu Tukutuku cohort fellow. Paul.
Kia ora, Rosalie. Kia ora, everyone on the call today. And yeah, very pleased to have been invited to kind of share and talk some more about both the journey I've already been on over this past decade and a little bit more around what we are doing in ways that we can realize that transformation and global impact. So actually arcing back to a very earlier Techweek event, and one of my other co-founders, Mark Pascal, is also on the call today. And yeah, together it was this realization that, okay, Ethereum and, kind of blockchain were becoming a little bit wider kind of known, and it was time to start educating. And so, yeah, between those Techweek events and blockchain labs, initially we were quite focused on how could we, build on a blockchain for both New Zealand businesses, but also some of the innovation that was happening within government and DIA. And very quickly we realized that, security, if you can't, be really sure that what is happening on the blockchain is, it's been coded correctly, or that the people, kind of delivering those applications to you have taken the proper kind of security methods to really write the code as robust as it can be, then people won't be able to adopt this, and it won't have that transformative kind of potential that otherwise the blockchain could. So that was Blockchain Labs, and we were fortunate enough to be one of the earlier kind of auditors in this space. So worked with a number of projects all around the world. In fact, a lot from Singapore and Switzerland and other smaller nations where we were seeing this innovation happen, and legitimate people, kind of building real applications on chain. It wasn't, without some kind of booms and busts like any new technology, but it certainly has matured over time. And throughout that journey, obviously, we were helping to protect, people's wealth. People were putting money both into the blockchains themselves, but also some of the projects and tokens that were issued on that. And from time to time, I would also, unfortunately, be a recipient of a phone call where somebody had passed away. And so therefore, this tough intersection between, the technology side of things and, human fragility and the legal system. If somebody does have assets and they are to be part of that individual's estate to be passed on to their loved ones, that can be quite tricky. And definitely a lot of the, the tools and wallets and other systems for blockchain were mostly, intended for people to hold and transact or exchange, and this kind of active basis, but not very much was built for how to make sure that that could be passed on to loved ones. So that's why I founded Everlasting, and yet again founded that here in New Zealand, because I could see New Zealand has the ability to intersect very closely with some of the government departments, and that meant first few years was either discussions with existing estate and trust lawyers, or with FMA and Inland Revenue and DIA. So in order to build the initial product that we could bring to market, to really make sure that individual clients or family trusts in New Zealand could have both good security from a day-to-day basis and good recovery. If something had happened, if there'd been flooding or earthquakes, that wouldn't result in the loss of funds, but then also that ultimate goal to secure the wealth beyond their lifetimes and to make sure it is available there for inheritance. And Everlasting has now had that product in market for just over 5 months now, and are starting to look at all the ways that we can then take them to other markets such as Australia and Singapore, and continue to offer more in the ways of the kind of key technologies that will help people to secure their wealth.
Paul, thank you. When you're speaking about wealth legacy, you're really talking about planning intergenerationally. How do you invest and plan for that kind of future, which may not be dependent or may outlive your own work or even your own organization's work?
Yeah, it is definitely something where, a 30-year plan is kind of a minimum period to be thinking through, because, it can't just be, here's what we're going to build as a startup and do it on a year-by-year or 3 to 5 year plan. We have to think much further out than that. And obviously, with a rapidly evolving technology like crypto assets on a blockchain, it's constantly evolving. So there is a lot of work to make sure that we're not, being too rigid in the ways things have worked. And as those underlying protocols change, that we can also incorporate those changes and think a little bit further ahead of what's coming down the line in terms of that global innovation as well.
Paul, thank you. We'll have an opportunity to explore a bit more about what you're seeing in New Zealand a little bit later, but I'd like to turn now to Aya Miyaguchi. Aya serves as Executive Director of the Ethereum Foundation, and it's here that she spearheads initiatives to support activities to expand Ethereum, which is the world's largest blockchain ecosystem. So she is absolutely a recognized world leader in this space. Her work includes core research, development endeavors, and multifaceted educational programs. She has, and she can describe this really beautiful vision of preserving Ethereum's essence as the infinite garden. So a dynamic, open source, inclusive, and permissionless hub of innovation. And so Aya is an Edmund Hillary Fellow, and she was, like Paul, part of the Manu Tukutuku cohort. Aya, we'd love to hear from you.
Thank you, Rosemary. Kia ora, everyone. My name is Aya Miyaguchi from the Ethereum Foundation. I think Rosemary introduced about the foundation, but again, repeating a little bit, the Ethereum Foundation is a non-profit foundation dedicated to the support of the entire Ethereum ecosystem, which includes the protocol, the platform infrastructure layer of R&D, and then now the ecosystem is pretty big. So we are also supporting things more than just the R&D part of the protocol layer. We don't really directly work with the applications layer too much, just because of the priority, but now a lot of things are being built on top of Ethereum, and we are, giving support to educational activities. Also, we have 3 guiding principles. One is stewardship of values, which Ethereum does carry important values technically, but also philosophically. And so we do want the Ethereum ecosystem to maintain those values. And we have another principle of long-term thinking. We do everything thinking about the future when the Ethereum Foundation may not exist, or when definitely people like Vitalik, myself, we're not going to be here forever. So what is the future we are looking at when we are, introducing this very new technology. And the third principle is pretty important for us. We call it subtraction. The philosophy of subtraction is that what makes Ethereum very different from everything else. Bitcoin is like it's also another example of like public decentralized blockchain, but the Ethereum is not owned by the Ethereum Foundation. We don't control, we don't own it. So how do we support this entire ecosystem without controlling? So we resist this, the tendency of accumulating power. Instead, since I joined, we gradually letting our power go where, it made sense at the beginning of the foundation. Ethereum was equal to the Ethereum Foundation, meaning like only people in the Ethereum Foundation in one room were building this project. But now it is a big open source project. Well, it has been an open source project for the entire time, but it attracted a lot of contributors outside of Ethereum Foundation. So how do we support them as a whole ecosystem? Because this is public goods for everyone. And so that's the philosophy of subtraction is something I feel strongly about, but also our people, like people around me and in the leadership, we really understand this. And so it is something that no one else has done. So we don't really have manuals and textbooks because people have this desire, tendency for like wanting for someone to one person to take the ownership or accountability, and that's easier for things to function. And then there is also another challenge of capitalism being part of this, because the industry is rich. So I understand a lot of people are also skeptical about this technology because of that part. A lot of things are complicated because of this, but what we do and then what we care and what I care is really this. Also, my hope is for this technology to be really the active innovation for the building things for really the positive impact to the humanity. And then that's where I think there's opportunity in New Zealand. We are going to talk more about, but and also I personally, that my background is before this, I joined the industry a decade ago. But my original interest when I discovered the technology of blockchain before Ethereum was really about this potential in financial inclusion. And the Ethereum made the possibility, like potential, 100 times bigger than just financial inclusion. And now it's about bringing ownership to where it should belong. And that's what I personally see this a technology to restore the balance that society has lost.
Aya,
I
thank
can
you.
answer to more questions, yeah.
Aya, thank you so much. And there's so much to unpick within that, particularly this philosophy of subtraction. Something that you spoke about, the opportunity to really support developing countries, developing markets and financial systems. Do you see what's occurring with cryptocurrency as a substitute, or do you see it as a complement to existing financial systems? If you were really successful in your endeavors, where would we be? What would we see in 10 years or 20 years' time?
It really depends on the situation. Each case, any technology, I don't think it's just blockchain, can be used for something positive but it can be used for something really bad. And so it really up to what's important is there's a technical advancement that needs to happen for anything to be achieved within Ethereum, within blockchain, and a lot of different innovations are happening. And also the mindset needs to be changed. And then that on both sides, mindset and technology, like the education is really the key part. So a lot of more activities need to happen for all of those three to happen. I do think, well, I often personally talk a lot more about things in developing countries. The reason why is that is, you know, just like other technology, they have opportunities leapfrogging because they don't have good existing systems. In the places that have very legacy conventional systems, it is harder for new technology to replace. So somehow it takes longer, right? So that's and then also another thing is I think it's very important for people to understand what this can actually do, and then we don't hear about use cases enough. And that's something I also personally feel mission for. But yeah, I don't know if I'm answering to your question directly, but this can be supplemental, but also this can be like a really new system. I was actually in Bhutan last week, talking to the king and the leadership there, who is envisioning like a new future for the country. They're known as the happiest place, but they also are facing a lot of new challenges. And how can they shift the systems and mindset and also governance and the structures and all this. So that's why they're looking into this technology for a while, and they need guidance to do it right. And that's where, you know, like I'm excited about, but also you need really good intentions leadership, so that tech cannot solve everything. Like we do need ethics and morals. Otherwise, this can be used for really bad. I'm not going to hide that.
Yeah. Aya, thank you, and opportunity to talk a little more about that shortly. I'd like to turn now to Andrew Hoppin. So Andrew is the co-founder, managing partner, and CIO at Hyla Fund Management, a leading blockchain technology investor. Andrew is absolutely passionate about ventures that build a more decentralized, egalitarian, and democratic planet. He co-founded the NASA CoLab program to increase transparency with communities, as well as Cover US, which was a digital health company that really put patients in control of their own health data. Andrew holds several governance positions, including the Board of Humanity in Action. And from a very personal perspective, I have the immense privilege of working with Andrew as a director and trustee of the Edmund Hillary Fellowship and the Hillary Institute on the board. And also Andrew was part of the Kawakawa cohort, which was the very first Edmund Hillary Fellowship talent attraction part of the program. Andrew.
It's such an honor to be here. Thank you. Nice to see a number of old friends and wonderful faces. So yeah, I really got into what I do today, which is I invest in early stage entrepreneurs who are building technologies almost exclusively involving blockchains that I think can be tremendously net positive for the world. And I got into this really from my background in governments, helping governments do a big transaction management and data publishing, data sharing, and collaboration projects at very large scales, but with very traditional, very centralized technologies. And when I came to New Zealand and was part of the Kawakawa cohort, I had the incredible good fortune. I was coming ostensibly to do GovTech, help with GovTech innovation. given my background in New Zealand, but I had no idea that I was going to have my fellow fellows be people like the co-founder of Coinbase, and just I was not with us yet, but and Paul was not with us yet, but it was an incredible group of people to educate me about what I could have done when I was working with and for governments, had I had these decentralizing tools in my toolbox. And I came to believe very quickly that I could have done a much better job with everything that I was trying to do for governments if I'd had these tools and if they were available and mature. So I basically went back to school as a fellow and learned from my fellow fellows. And one good way I find to learn is to put some of your own skin in the game. So I put in some of my own money and some of those of my close networks, and ended up now running essentially a venture fund in this space. The other thing I do is I wear a hat very informally as an advocate. I'm just candidly a fairly center-left person politically in the US context, and crypto, as distinct from blockchains perhaps, but very much intertwined with it, as you said, Rosalie, has been very much a center-right movement here in the US, especially of late. And so I'm working hard to try to depoliticize the technology and speak to anybody who will listen about many of the themes that I spoke about, because I think it's really important this technology is about by and for humanity and not about politics or partisanship. I believe these technologies are fundamentally about dissemination, devolution of power. In other words, I believe that we have a world where there's tremendous inequities of power of all forms, not just the fundamental but simplistic one of economic power, but also political, geographic. Aotearoa, New Zealand, is a small island on the edge of the world, has less power in some regards simply by virtue of its location than it might otherwise if it were located in a different place, etc. So I think technologies that are able to distribute power are help the world with resilience, and I think we need that right now. I also think they're fundamentally transformative in their potential, at least for coordination. Like, I think a lot of what we do as a society is we try to coordinate. We try to work well with each other, and we build institutions and governments, nation states even, in order to help with that. But it is not working nearly as well as I think it could or should. And in many cases, I think it's working less well today than it has in the past. And I think these technologies offer an alternative and complementary path to that. So I invest as an investor in teams that I think are building the pieces of the puzzle that can help realize those potential net benefits for the world. And just to give 4 specific examples that I'm inspired by, I think financial resilience is sort of the seminal use case for crypto. Speaking of Bitcoin specifically, my in-laws happen to be from Sudan, which has been cut off from the world's financial systems for many decades as the former designated state sponsor of terror by the US government. And even though it is not that now today, it is a war zone today, sadly. And so the people there cannot rely on any form of traditional currency or banking to really make their lives work. And digital currencies of various forms have offered a real lifeline to a lot of folks there in a very different way. I spent a lot of time with people in Argentina who are a very high functioning government in many ways, but also a very, very unstable currency in other ways, where literally I've got friends who used to keep cash under their mattress 5 years ago, even in Argentina, is the best way that they could preserve their what they had. And so these technologies from their inception, I think, have been about helping people in disadvantaged circumstances like that. In the coordination context, I'm really inspired by projects like Atlantis DAO in India, which are helping communities share water better, extra-governmentally, coordinate with each other about sharing a really critical resource. And also decentralized science. I spent a lot of time in healthcare and looking at how we can do better research faster to help more people with health issues. And the sad truth is that there are business models, especially in the US perhaps, that dictate what gets research funding. And I think blockchains offer a different way to align and aggregate stakeholders and the investments, including financial, those stakeholders can make to help research and development happen around health therapies that would just otherwise not happen. And just very briefly, I think also blockchains can be fundamental to safeguarding AI, and particularly for countries that aren't the domicile of the big players like OpenAI. I think that I would have a lot of concern if I were in a small country that was not the home of a company developing one of the world's most powerful AI models, about how I can ensure that if I become a customer of it, that I'm getting something that is really going to be of service to my community. And then finally, this is a little bit parochial given my background, but I really think blockchains can be phenomenally powerful for governments to make governments work better. And not just governments as a regulator, but governments actually as a consumer of and contributor to blockchain technologies, and particularly in the domains of payments and transparency about contracts and everything that we spend money on as governments, and then also around identity and our need for a form of sovereignty of sorts at an individual level, at a community level, which I think is particularly important in a sort of dual sovereign context, as Aotearoa New Zealand obviously has, and also at a national level. And I think balancing the tension between privacy and sharing is something that the cryptography inherent to blockchains can be really helpful with. So I'll pause there, but suffice to say, I think these technologies can be a really important ingredient in trying to make what is otherwise, I think right now, quite a chaotic and perilous world work a lot better for more people. And that's what I'm inspired by.
Andrew, thank you. That is incredibly inspiring. I can't sort of move beyond the fact that there has been so much volatility in the sort of blockchain and crypto markets. There's quite a lot of regulatory challenges that are emerging. There's a lot of volatility. I'm just curious to get your sort of take, a sense of a temperature check, I guess, on the ground in the US at the moment for how this is being viewed.
It's quite a week to ask that question because there's been a big sea change this week, actually, where a lot of is happening politically this week around these issues. I think I just zoom out a little bit and say, like any technologies, the technology is not inherently good or bad. It can be used for good or ill, and you may have valid different opinions about what is good and what is ill. I will say there's absolutely lots of fraud and greed and hype and wishful thinking inherent, rampant in crypto. That's absolutely true. And everything I described, I believe, is not only possible, but is also expressed and actually making a net positive impact in the world right now at the same time. And so I think the good news is most of the thoughtful people, whether you're left, right, or center politically, agree that these technologies should be regulated, but that they should be regulated transparently, and they should be regulated well, and they should be regulated in a way that is specific to these technologies and this time, and not based on a paradigm that preceded these technologies necessarily. So it's a very important time. It's an important time for political engagement. It's an important time to engage in depoliticizing, in the sense of partisan politics, these technologies, because I think they again, that will stand in the way of them being of service to the world if we don't do a good job on developing good, sound, balanced, nonpartisan regulations. But in terms of temperature check, it's been a phenomenally good week for all of the things that I care about. I think we've really made a lot of strides in depoliticizing, temporarily at least, these technologies in the US context. And I could go on at length about why or what's going on, but I'd say, generally speaking, it's a much better time to be an entrepreneur in this country this week. We're using these technologies this week than it was last week.
Andrew, thank you. And look, I hope, Bob, because I know that you typed in a question about the US regulatory environment. I'm hoping that answers your question. And if it doesn't, then please do just follow up and chat. Look, I'd like to just open up a little bit more widely, but I'd go to Aya first. Aya, I'd love to ask about your investment and engagement in New Zealand. I know that you invested in an organisation called the Wellbeing Protocol, and I was just keen to understand where you saw that potential and opportunity.
Yeah, to be clear, I didn't invest. I made some personal donations. The Wellbeing Protocol. Well, like Mark is here, who is the founder. He can explain better. But the reason why I wanted to support, or I guess so, giving some advice, is that it's basically the Web3, but also Ethereum or blockchain ecosystem has made different innovations. It is kind of like letting you see the world in a different way. Is like how looking at the systems, how decisions are being made, and where is the ownership of the decision, right? That kind of thing. So it's not really just about putting things on chain and then doing things with smart contracts. So what they do is really using this voting system, which is was kind of an innovation inside the Ethereum community and also some researchers outside, is like, how do we create this voting system that is very like wouldn't be affected by some powers or pressure, right? So simply that how do we really ensure the democracy, but also using the power of blockchain, you can really make sure the ownership is very clear and transparent. So that's why, and then for example, the project that I gave my own donation to is that this was supporting like Maori youth in New Zealand, and when there's some funding, they for their own growth, but they can be part of this decision making, and then that decision making is transparent. So there's a sense of ownership is also like it's giving some education to them, but also I think it's very inspiring and powerful coming from New Zealand if the world can see this, because this country cares about, you know, something like identity is very important topic in New Zealand because of the history, and also environmental issues is also very important, and that's a very important thing that this technology of blockchain is solving. But coming from this place, it's more inspiring. Like it's something I said to the time people too. They're working on this carbon registry solution using blockchain, using like a building. Some part of it is on Ethereum. It's very inspiring to hear that from the only carbon negative country in the world. And so that's why I see those opportunities in each different places. And lobbying protocol is basically giving that tool to nonprofit organizations to use this as a tool. But you know, it doesn't matter whether it's blockchain or Ethereum or Web3. You know, like at the end of the day, but it is what it's solving.
Thank you. Paul, maybe if I just widen it out a little, you are such a veteran of the industry here in New Zealand. And I'd just be really keen to understand where you see the opportunity for Aotearoa. There's been a number of references through the discussion so far, and we have been leaders in fintech with FPOS in the past. Where do you see our opportunity?
Yeah, thanks, Rosalie. It's an interesting spectrum because obviously whilst we were ahead on things like FPOS, we've been further behind on that kind of mobile payment type of systems. And I think if we step back, really it does come down to what is the necessity or the need of different countries and different communities at different points of time along that journey. And so we perhaps in New Zealand got a little bit comfortable with FPOS, and that solved a need we had then, but then we haven't realized the same needs at other stages as mobile and internet technologies evolved. And to a large extent, it's similar again now with blockchain in terms of, you know, we do have still relatively stable banking systems and fairly efficient payment networks. However, if we don't look too much to what has transpired and we actually start to look further forward, definitely payments are becoming more forward again. You know, like both of the fellows have mentioned, there are, you know, geopolitical uncertainties and sometimes nations being cut out of certain banking systems. And as individuals who might be both transacting globally or also as global citizens that are moving around, and you know, they want a certainty that there will always be some method to enact a payment. And that's still largely the largest use case for blockchains that we've seen, and one that I think we'll see continue to expand over the coming years and decade ahead. And the challenge really for regulators is how to make sure that's done in a really safe way and isn't going to destabilize the local economy, but also not going to isolate a country. And so for New Zealand, we do have a wealth of expertise, some really good developers and cryptographers, and it's a matter of finding that balance of, okay, let's push as fast and as hard as we can, and let's innovate, but then also making sure that it is grounded in those kind of principles of security and resilience.
Andrew, this is a perfect opportunity for you to speak into where you see that opportunity within government as a former government CIO, but also someone who has engaged so closely with New Zealand. What do you identify as being the potential use cases for where we could show leadership?
As I mentioned very briefly at the end, I think the two that it would be really where you could make frankly a big global splash if you did it in New Zealand was one around payments. Really having literally payments made on blockchains to vendors, so that every tax dollar that's spent is actually traceable in terms of where it goes, without a huge heavy lift by a lot of staff in government paid by tax dollars, but instead just as part of the payment process. Blockchains are phenomenally good at recording payments, very, very good at making them, easy to evaluate, assess, build derivative, information, insights, and products around. So put payments on chain for everything that tax dollars are spent on. And I think that would actually align well with a government that is really, as I understand it right now in New Zealand, really concerned about containing government spending. And then the other is, as I mentioned briefly as well, just around the different layers, sort of fractally, that I think sovereignty and agency around your data are important, and all the more in an era where we're going to be increasingly impacted by artificial intelligence, and where it's increasingly difficult to prove anything when it's so easy to create anything with artificial intelligence. I think it's going to be really important to prove that you're a person. Really important to be able to do that without sharing everything about yourself at the same time. And so that's attention. And so there are blockchain protocols for your proof of humanity. There are blockchain protocols for verified claims about yourself that allow you to prove something cryptographically without revealing all the underlying data that a government would typically use to assess the truth of something you're claiming, like I live here, or I don't live there and I don't owe taxes there, or I am eligible for this benefit because I have these other characteristics about me in life. And I think I can't think of a better place, frankly, than Aotearoa New Zealand to tackle those issues, because you can get every stakeholder that would be important for doing that around a table fairly readily. You have dual sovereignty issues and opportunities in the country. You have a high functioning institutions, and generally a brand worldwide of high trust and credibility. So if New Zealand does it, I think you would be a model for the world. And so I just think that that's both good for the people of the country and also a great opportunity to lead by example for the world.
So this positions government not just in terms of regulation, but also in terms of adoption and contribution, being able to really show leadership. Thank you.
Yeah.
Getting some questions, and I'm conscious of time. There's a question for you, Paul, from Holly. Saying New Zealand has some distinct advantages as a haven for the legacy management of crypto, as we don't have CGT and IHT at present. Now, I realize that may be sort of quite technical, but is there a distinct advantage that you can see in that?
Yes, and in fact, we were one of the first jurisdictions to actually consider the case of digital assets being held in trust. And so we did actually get very early on some high court precedent there that can be referred back to. And that was also part of what helped Everlasting really, start from that point of, okay, there can be digital assets, they can be held in trust, and they don't have to just be held by a single person. So if we do enable a state lawyer to be a professional that is also holding a key over those digital assets, first of all, we know technically we can do that securely, but then legally, can we do that? And so, yes, it has been a great testbed for that from the legal and high court perspective. And then from a tax perspective, we have also worked extensively with Inland Revenue to kind of establish, I think previously, whilst we don't have capital gains tax in New Zealand, there are some more intent-driven or kind of taxation laws, and the intent that the New Zealand government and Inland Revenue had taken was that all crypto assets were being held with this intent to dispose of them later, and that was all speculative. And so by working quite closely with them and explaining to them, there are a lot of other use cases, and whilst that might have been true when you look back several years, there's a lot now where, even the example of payment tokens or stable coins, they're not being held with an intent to, kind of make a speculative profit. And also then our clients, that might have Bitcoin or Ethereum who are already in a trust structure, and there's beneficiaries and either children or grandchildren that are kind of named as beneficiaries over those. That shouldn't be in a purely speculative tax on income basis. And so we're great to realize that within Inland Revenue last year, and that has been recognized by the Australian Tax Office and other regulatory bodies across Asia Pacific to see that, great, New Zealand has done that first, and we have got now a kind of framework that we can use in some of those other countries as well.
Thank you. We've gotten a question from Aditya. Now, I'm not sure quite who to direct it to. I think it might be you, Aya. My question is about regulation and asset classification. In the distant future, where will an asset, like I'm guessing ETH, so Ether, fall under traditional asset classification models used by regulatory agencies?
I think it's just, I know it's a hot topic this week specifically, and this event is just happening now. I don't want to spend too much time on talking about the US regulation but like Andrew said, there just some regulations are necessary, right? But at the same time, how a policy is being made is also it's like even in a big place like the United Nations, it's lacking transparent, or maybe because it's a big place, lacking transparency. that decision making alone shouldn't probably need a transparency. So we're just hoping regarding some that we have, what we, meaning the Ethereum community, has taken enough careful steps to keep all the technical development decentralized. And that's very important. And that's very important philosophically, not really to, the original intention was really not to escape from this regulatory trap. But that conversation and understanding of the system is it's not easy because it requires some technical understanding. So that type of education is, we as the Ethereum Foundation, we've been supporting behind the scenes these organizations who are educating policymakers, but also regarding some victims, we are discussing now, how to help those people. But again, it's where that should fall into, it really depends on each jurisdiction. And I'm just hoping that the big places don't affect, especially when they don't have enough understanding of the technology, that they shouldn't affect other places. That's one of the reasons why we need more decentralization. And I see opportunities in smaller, more organized places like New Zealand.
Aya, thank you. Look, I'm conscious of time, so just to really wrap up what we've heard and talked about today, the things that's really jumped out for me is hearing this real sense of vision and the empowerment and the decentralization of power. I love this philosophy of subtraction, which is this idea of how do you build an ecosystem that doesn't accrue power or influence or control to any one party, but allows ownership to be held by many. And that was a common theme that I heard right the way through it. I think our panelists shared some really quite clear opportunities for where New Zealand can, as a small, independent, progressive country, really deliver leadership. And it's not just thinking about it in the regulatory space and how we might align with other regulatory leaders around the world, but also where we could look at improving our current financial systems, where we could look at in our own security, picking up the point Andrew made as well about AI and that ability not to have all of our AI intelligence held by offshore companies or countries. What opportunity could we take there? So just before I hand back to Kelly, any sort of last thoughts or additions that our panelists would like to make? No? Listen, well, listen.
Kia ora,
Oh,
whānau.
no, I can.
May I say something?
Lily,
May
of
I
course.
say something as a watcher? Kia ora koutou, beautiful EHF fellows. Lovely to see some of you. Andrew, great to see you again. Look, I am coming from a grassroots perspective. I truly believe in decentralized finance, blockchain, crypto. This is a big changer for us, I believe, in terms of bridging the gap between the haves and the have-nots. One of the tricky things we have to do, though, once again, I'm talking from the grassroots level, is in the education, global adoption, and people understanding what it's about and how to utilize it. So the reason why I'm telling you this, wonderful people, is because we are doing that on the ground now with our people. Every Sunday, we are just training the crypto space. What is blockchain? In fact, how do you make a crypto wallet? We're teaching them this because at the moment, you may have noticed there's a lot of scammers out there getting people into these multi-level marketing type scenarios. So we have to protect our people. And so at the moment, we are doing these classes. We're helping make crypto wallets and even making little investments on safe and stable coin type things. So if that is something that you think is cool and that is something you'd possibly like to support, then please get in touch because we're doing that right now and our people need to learn. Thank you for being such revolutionists in this space. Kia ora.
Lily, thank you. And that's a wonderful grassroots, real use case for where some of the potential lies. So a huge thank you to each of our panelists for your voice, for your time, for your insights, but also for your continued passion and sense of purpose around this opportunity. We are incredibly grateful. I'll hand back now to Kelly.
Thank you, Rosalie, and thank you so much, Aya, Paul, and Andrew. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. It's been a great session today. And we also just want to give a huge shout out to our friends at NZ Tech for running Techweek and inviting us to be part of the program. There are many more events happening this week, and Hyla's going to pop it in the chat. So techweek.co.nz, check out the program. We would also love your feedback to support us with future events. So if you can please complete a short survey, which we will send out, but we'll also put that link in the chat now so you can start filling that out. And we will also be posting this recording of the session on the EHF website events page very soon. So thank you very much, and we will now close with a karakia. Kia whakairia te tapu, kia wātea ai te ara, kia tūruki whakataha ai, kia tūruku whakataka ai. Homea, huia, taikia. Thank you so much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day. Ka kite.